Guys, thank you. Everyone handed in the voting sheets.
Jelle, please hurry up to your seat. So, dear council, a miracle has happened. I think somebody was getting worried of my head, so they wanted me to have the gavel back so that I don't have to get more of a head on this part. So we can move forward in the GA, and because we have a little bit of a delay, we have to be quick and snappy. And we move forward to the to the panel discussion about the future of IEM education. And I would like to invite our guests to the stage.
It's on. So the next slide.
Good morning, everybody. You just did something really exciting. You did the voting, and we're all very curious what will come out. And now we have this almost impossible task to make you think about your studies again for a moment. So to kind of get you into the mood, we'd like to ask you to all stand up, please. Now, the question I have to you is, which one of you is not going to do a master thesis? If you don't do a master thesis, you can just sit down. Okay, so we're all going to do a master thesis. Then my question to you is, if you're planning to do your master thesis at university, so on a theoretical subject, then you can turn and watch in that direction. So if you are planning to do your master thesis at university, you turn in that direction. And if you're planning to do your master thesis on a practical case at a company or an organization, then you turn in that direction. Now, if you don't know yet, do what you would like to do. Turn in the direction you would like to move. And now I would like to ask you to, first of all, look around. Who else is thinking about the same thing as you would like to do? And then the interesting thing is that you will be facing other people who would make another choice. And maybe you just can take a minute to just exchange between you why you're making the choice you're making, and also talk about which difficulties you encounter in the choice that you are making. Just take a minute to do that. Yeah. Sorry?
A lot of folks facing
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Yeah, I didn't really see it, yeah? A lot of people wanted to...
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you all very much. Now you may sit down and let's use this inspiration that you just had between you to do the panel discussion together. And what we saw is that there's a lot of people that were facing that direction, i.e. people who want to do the master thesis in a practical context of an organization. What we would like to talk about today is about doing your master thesis in such a practical situation. And I will share from my experience, more the industry perspective, and Jim and Geert will share more the academic perspective. So I feel really happy that so many people look that direction, because I think it's really important that at the end of your studies, before you actually go and work in whichever environment you will, that you actually kind of exercise and learn how to make the connection between the theory and the practice. Because that's what you will bring to companies. And the master thesis is a great way to actually do that, to make that connection with the help of the academic and somebody from the company. So it's a great opportunity. And also it's a great opportunity to learn about how an organization functions and to explore for yourself in what type of context you would like to work later. So it gives you a head start, I think, in many ways.
Okay, two things. What's the process of writing a thesis when you're doing it in a company? And what kind of support do you need whilst you're doing that? Okay, process. And there's 4 steps, 4 kind of issues. Firstly, one of the things which it's helpful to be aware of and think about, every company has loads of things that it would really like to work out, do and change and improve and so on, but they haven't got the time. So when they suggest to you, could you look at this topic for us, or look at this problem, or explore this opportunity, actually, they themselves haven't got a view of what the problem is. They know they're worried about it. What they tell you is their way of not losing the question. Your first task is to work out what the problem really is, or what the opportunity really is, because if they had done that, they would have solved it, they'd have finished. They haven't done that. They're asking you to do that. So the second thing then, as you start to explore, one thing you will find is they might have asked you to look at what sounds like a very technical issue. That will be true, but inside it, you will always find that there's a human issue, and you have to find the human issue and solve that as well. Otherwise, it won't work. Very often, one of the things that you do find is They actually all know what the problem is, if it's a problem that they've asked you to look at, and they all kind of know what the answer might be, but they've all kind of agreed never to talk about it. So you're in this kind of difficult zone of kind of teasing out of people what the real issue is. You're a fresh pair of eyes and ears, and you're allowed to go around and ask all sorts of stupid questions that they would never ask, but they need to ask. So your third task is you then have to feed back to them and open them up and get them talking about things which they kind of know, and they're interested in the answer, but they've not been talking about it. So can you see, these three processes are all very human interaction kind of processes, and this is you round and about in the company talking to people and earning their interest, earning their attention, and helping them get articulate about the answer. Where does a thesis fit into all this? It's your master's thesis, and what your master's degree does is says something about you. This is the whole growth process for you, and the thesis is the tool. It is not the product. You are the product. It's about getting clear in your mind, in their minds, and writing it on the page is tough to do and helps you get it clear and helps them get it clear. So the thesis is a very useful tool in the process. It isn't the purpose of the process. The purpose of the process is A, solving that problem, but your growth. So what kind of support do you need through that process? You need to have somebody in the company who is helping you, who is a kind of reference point, who's very supportive of you, doing all this exploring, helps you talk to people, etc., etc. You also need somebody in your university who helps you with those difficult things when people in the company aren't talking about it or aren't, how do I handle this? Somebody who's not involved in the company that you can talk to about it, so support from the university as well. And what you also need to think about when you're out doing a project in a company is it's lonely if you're in a place completely on your own. I'm now not meaning in work time, I'm meaning outside of work time. If you've gone to a company somewhere else and you haven't got any friends anywhere near, you do also have to have a life. So try and make sure that you've got friends around and you've got other people to talk to that keep you through the period when you're in the company. So 3 bits of support. Can you see what I'm talking about all the time? It's about human things and about you and your growth.
Okay, I'm not surprised that most of the folks, were facing that side. It's, in fact, when I look at most of my students, when they need to do a master's thesis, they come to ask me, I want to do something that is practical and relevant, and by the end of my master's thesis, I want to see someone say, yep, I can use that, that's been of benefit for me. So I think it's really good, to keep that in mind, that indeed you may want to, solve some practical problems. On the other hand, I do think there's value in doing research as well. And so that means I strongly believe in what is called action research. It's trying to bridge between, 2 different worlds. If you follow an action research project, it's typically different from more traditional research approaches in a sense that it's doing research in action and not research about action. Okay, so let me clarify what the difference is. If you go to a company and you do a number of interviews and you ask them, how do you work, and you write it down and you make a synthesis and create some kind of model of that, it's a nice case study. It's about the company's work. Okay, it's not what you actually contributed to, changes within the organization. An action researcher is not a neutral observer. He's someone that actually works with the company to solve a problem. Okay, so you start from, guys, tell us, what you're really worrying about, and then I will look into theories, into, different kind of papers, books, authors, etc., to see how the existing knowledge can contribute in solving your particular problem. Okay, so that also means that it's collaborative. I mean, you work with the people together. That's sometimes a little bit weird, because then, especially if you would do a PhD based on action research, there are folks that would say well, but what did you do? Okay, so like, what's your contribution? It all comes from the company, okay? You really work very closely together because you solve a problem and you need to have mutual agreement that the problem is solved. Okay, you as a researcher need to be firm on like, we did it the right way, and they need to be sure to say like, and yeah, that really helps, you know, like it worked. So that means that at the core, there is some kind of problem-solving circle. The only difference with, you know, like you analyze things, think about, you know, like making modifications, then you evaluate that, is there is a step of specifying learning. And that's what makes the step different from regular problem solving. You have to go back and say like, what we did here, like how do we bridge that to what has been written in literature again? So can I contribute to a larger knowledge database than only what we see in this particular context? Is it confirming what other authors have been writing? Is it contradicting what other writers are writing? What are the factors that should be considered, etc.? So it stimulates, you know, like for the future. It's not, you know, like evidence that proves that under all circumstances these are the important factors. It's just in this context it works. It might work in a different context. We need to investigate that. Okay, that's more or less, you know, like I would say what works. It's not always easy to convince companies that they should actively work with you as an action researcher. They very often want you to work on the action part, but not necessarily on the research part. And research means that you have to take time to sit down, to think about the instruments that you're using, to go through the literature, to test, to validate, you know, like to go through iterations, not just once maybe lucky, you know, like second time, yeah, that's good probability, and the second, third time, okay, now we got it, okay? So companies very often don't take the time to go through that learning cycles. They rush, you know, like from one problem to another. So something to keep in mind if you want to do an action research approach.
So, has this inspired any questions with you?
They are so inspired, they don't know what to say. But yeah, let's take the question from the front.
Sebastian, local group Hamburg. At least what I experienced in the last years is that normally the main problem is that the communication between the professor and the company is not that good. They're like, they expect other things and there are communication problems. What would you advise us to support like this communication?
Yeah, and it's a very common problem. I would first like to say, you know, like, unfortunately, and I think Jim will, you know, like support me on this, unfortunately, there are not a lot of professors that are really good action researchers. A lot of them, you know, like take more a positive science perspective where they, you know, like tend to be neutral and they do their work, you know, like in their isolation. They don't really always work with companies together, you know, like to solve things. Which also means that they're not always good communicators. And as, you know, like a student, you can be the victim of that kind of situation. So when you start some kind of action research project, you have to anticipate on that. And so that means you have to organize events where you bring the professor and the members of the company together. If you leave it in their hands, you know, like you're taking a risk. You know, like, so I would say try to be proactive in bringing them together, you know, like include them in emails, but have the face-to-face meetings in the company, not, you know, like in the university. I think that would be my advice. So.
Yeah, one of the key, it's like a joke, but it isn't a joke. One of the key things about managing is learning how to manage your manager and managing your professors and also managing the people in the company is kind of an important part of the learning. How do you do that? How do you get their attention? How do you get them there? Exactly, as Gert's just said, you can quite often get professors who really don't want to know, just want to use you, and they're interested in the results of the thesis, what I said a minute or two ago, it's actually about your growth. It's about you, is what it's about. And sometimes you have to kind of, if I say fight for that, I mean in a nice way, but don't let go. I can ask Tom and Kanu, they were said yesterday they weren't here because on Friday they were finishing projects in companies and giving the feedback to the project, to the companies, the people in the company on the Friday, getting it live and taking off in the company on Friday. And they've been given a special bit of leeway because normally they'd be having to hand in their report from that project, their thesis on Monday, and they're allowed to hand it in on Tuesday. Somebody's been kind of, you're on Monday, are you? Yeah, okay. It's a bit tough, isn't it? But maybe if we could just pass the microphone, could you just say a little bit about what support you have or haven't had in the project? Just as an example. The small group of us who run the Institute for Manufacturing have all spent a lot of time in industry doing it for real. We are not your average academic. And we look after the people, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. I mean,
Please stand up.
Sorry. So the people in the company were former, like the one on my project was someone who'd actually studied the course that I study. So he knows what's expected of a project, and they kind of helped define what our scope should be and helped us. So if we thought our scope was creeping too much, they were very supportive in helping us reduce the scope. But they were open to us asking the questions in the first place. And I think often people see the questioner a bit challenged, like they're a bit too scared to challenge what question they're supposed to solve. So we looked at it and said, that's too much work to do in 2 weeks, but we can do this in 2 weeks. And then they kind of gave a bit and took a bit, and then it was okay, and we managed to do our project. But like some other groups, one of the other groups who went to Jaguar Land Rover didn't narrow their scope, and they ended up with a project that would take 6 months, and they only had 2 weeks. So, I mean, and it was quite nice because the professors and stuff were also supportive. Like Ian basically came to us and said, what do you think of your scope? How are you finding it? And there was a lot of give and take. And I know that we're quite lucky in having that, and that's not always the same for everyone's. But if you can challenge your brief, it may help.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, we had one question from, I understand, the live stream. So, from Pekka. He's basically the live stream. Thank you.
Pekka from Oulu and Porto. So I have a question. We are talking about collaboration, but when you do your master thesis, what is the audience and the customer or the target you are doing it for?
From my experience, I mean, you do it to graduate. That's your first priority. But if you do it in an organization, your audience is as well the company, because but the first priority is your graduation and your growth as a person, as Jim said.
Yeah, for us, the deal is the company is getting a problem explored, solved, etc., etc. It is not a contract. They are not employing you and they are not paying you. It is part of your degree and you're doing a project in that company. And sometimes it comes that the truth, and the issue is about you finding what's true and saying what's true, can occasionally, we have it happen, be incomplete. The company really do not want to know. That's their problem. It isn't your problem. Yeah, still speak the truth. And sometimes, for reasons outside of your control, you don't finish because something that is supposed to be appearing during the period of the project so you can explore this and do this never arrives, so you can't finish. Again, that's not in your control. It's not your problem. It's not enough. You do have to be clear that this is not a contractual exchange. It's a project that you're doing, and you are a free agent. Your responsibility is firstly to yourself, but secondly to the course that you're doing, to the work that you're doing in the sequence of your degree, and to do that as well as you can. Usually it works very well that there are fruitful outcomes all round. Occasionally you have quite substantial discussions afterwards with your professor who was supervising you around what it was that that company just was not seeing and not doing. I can tell you, because I've been there many times, those are very tough projects. I mean, I know it's a hard road, but you learn a huge amount from them. And if I go back to it, the issue is your growth. And some of the best bits of growth that I've seen people come through have been through what you would think were the worst, most awful projects. Gee, they grew. Where the support matters.
Yeah, I think the first issue is you're doing a master thesis to prove that you're capable of handling problems. You know, like the focus is on your development process. At least it should be, I think, right? But there is, of course, a context, and that means, you know, like there might be a company that has a specific problem. It's always more fun if you're able to solve the problem, you know, like and get some kind of positive feedback from the customer from that perspective. But you have to accept that within a limited time frame, you're not always, you know, like able to do that. Part of the problem sometimes is that companies are not always really good in understanding what their problem really is. Okay, so when they ask for your support, they ask A, but the first meeting you get there, you understand it's about B. Okay, you know, like, and then can you reframe it? Can you not? That depends a little bit of, you know, like how the university thinks about them, how the company thinks about that, etc. But you should look at it first as, you know, like your own personal growing process. More and more universities are experiencing pressure from a research perspective. So, you know, universities, they need to be accredited, right? And that means that they have auditors that at least every 6 years, they come and look in, you know, like all the thesis works, and then they evaluate, you know, like to what extent is this really research? Okay, so is it a sound methodology? Is there a good literature review? You know, like are using validated instruments, etc. Those are the typical criteria that they be looking for. So if we would just solve a problem, you know, like just ignoring these kind of things from research, then the customer from the university would not be happy with what you're doing there either. Okay, so it's a little bit of a balancing act, but your process should be, you know, like I think at the center of that. That makes sense.
Thank you. I guess Marlies was
Yeah,
the...
maybe just one more comment on it.
Marcia was the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can comment, of course.
One more question? While he's walking there, I just one more thing on it. If I am the company who has somebody doing the master thesis, I'm also putting a lot of my time in it. And I'm not a charity. So I do want to see some results and something that's useful for me. So it is a balance. But I think that's exactly the kind of challenge that is just great for your growth. And if you, I think it's one you should really go for, because that's what work is also all about. You cannot just exploit, you also have to deliver results.
Could I just add a little bit to that? Yeah, all the people that you're dealing with in companies are busy people and they do not have the time. And you want to catch them in the corridor, in their room or on their workplace or whatever it is for just a minute or two to ask them. You have to earn that time from them. Do your homework first and know what they do and be asking them sensible questions when you talk to them. If they think you're an idiot, you will not get the time. You have to earn their time.
Yeah, maybe, you know, like one also interesting perspective is that a lot of companies still think about engineers, you know, like as folks with a very strong analytical skills and, you know, like mathematical background and, you know, like these kind of things. So very often the problems that they frame for you are highly analytical, you know, like mathematical problems, okay? I can tell you a story where I was, you know, like asked to facilitate a change project where the company said we need a scorecard, you know, like, and we don't seem to be able to implement a scorecard. Can you help us define the measures and, you know, blah blah blah, all that kind of thing. So we had a first meeting, thought about strategy, priorities, you know, like all that kind of stuff, and then we had a break. Okay. What happens even if you look at this kind of break? Then people start to regroup together. Okay, and now this was a company where, you know, like different departments were wearing different uniforms. And then you could see like green and blue and, you know, all different types of colors. It's not a problem of, you know, like finding the metrics. It's a problem of people that don't communicate with each other. Okay, so the people side of it is sometimes completely ignored. And so instead of, you know, like telling you, we don't really cooperate well, they give you a technical excuse to say, like, focus on the measurement system. Okay, so.
They demonstrate that they're not working very well. Not exactly.
I'm always saying to the applicants, please keep your answer short. This time I'm not going to say it, but we will take one more question and then we have to move forward.
Okay, Marcia Porto. So I was actually turned to that side and Alina was to that side. And when we were talking, she said that she has a very valid point, which is you can get practical experience on an internship and not necessarily during your master thesis. And the truth is that when we start working, we don't usually go back to the theoretical parts or the research. So the fact is that if you lose, let's say, the opportunity of doing either an action research or real research, you're probably never going to do it again. So what is your opinion about that? What should we do?
I can only say, like, it's very true. You know, like, if indeed, you know, like you graduate, go to a company, then returning back is probably going to be difficult. Okay, but it can be done. I spent, you know, like almost 15 years in industry, and I, you know, like have a completely academic career afterwards. I always advise people get 2 or 3 years experience in a company, then do your PhD. Okay, because you have to experience what companies are really about. Leadership gives you a little bit of a taste of it, so I strongly encourage that, but it's still not really, you know, like what companies look like from a longer term perspective. So to get more insights, I think 2-3 years working in a company, if you then return back, you know, like all the literature that you will see afterwards, it just opens your eyes from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, both directions are completely valid. They have different kind of interests in them, and what you need to do is follow what's interesting to you. For instance, in the IFM in Cambridge, we have got one of the best laser technology development groups on the planet. If you are interested in doing laser research or getting to where the kind of cutting edge is in laser technology development, you will spend months learning how to make the research equipment work. There's lots of stuff to do with how you do research in fine detail that is also a huge learning zone. It's a different learning zone. You know, equally valid. Both directions are completely valid. A research-focused project, you will need a lot of support from the research group within the university. That might not be your professor, but it's another group in the university maybe. It's the same kind of issue, it's just a different location. Both are valid.
Agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marlies, Jim, and Gerd. And let's quickly move forward to agenda point number 46, ESTIEM Talks by Alumni. And Marlies can continue.
I'm not sure I can remember everything I wanted to say, so I just put some paper here. Actually, the discussion we just had is a nice introduction to what I want to say to you in this talk. Because we talked about that there's always things sometimes below the surface or human dynamics happening. And this may give you a tool that you can use. Because why is it that many mergers and acquisitions actually don't succeed? And why is it teams and organizations, people are in a flow, delivering great results, while others are struggling. And why is it that ESTIEM has thrived for 25 years, and another company I founded, which was named Quintel, dissolved within 10 years? I had a lot of questions about it, and I explored them, and here's what I discovered. We tend to be taught to think in structures. We think in organizational structures, we think in financial structures, legal structures, but often all else is going on. Like in a merger, there may be all the dynamics that are causing, I mean, even though the numbers look good on paper, that are causing that a merger doesn't succeed. So I think we need to move from fixing symptoms to actually addressing root causes. And what I will share with you may be a way, an approach, is a bit open-minded approach, but I think you can handle that, to look at it differently and to actually explore those system dynamics. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, consider this herd of horses. Horses are prey animal, and they need the safety of the herd to survive. If the herd functions well, they will actually stay together in the herd, cooperate, and other horses will want to join that same herd. Now, a crowd of people. People are prey animal, really. Mankind is made for teamwork. We are made to work together and to act as a team to survive. So crowd is a herd. ESTIEM is a herd. We're actually all part of many different herds. And these herds give us the safety, the clarity, and a place to thrive as human beings. Now, we also have been given by nature a sense to actually, this ability to sense it immediately if the herd is not functioning well, because our safety is at stake. We know when that's the case. Now, elephants, they have been living the same way for a very long time. And we people, we live and dress and work in a very different way than we did 50,000 years ago. And yet, we are still the same people. We are still who we are, and the same people we were 50,000 years ago. So now people will work a lot with horses. They've learned to understand how a herd of horses functions. And same with people who work a lot with groups of people, with families. They have learned how a herd of family functions. And it seems that there are certain principles at work that make a living system function well. Now, I talk about systems, and what I mean with systems is a system is a set of interacting or interdependent components together forming an integrated whole. And an organization can be seen as a system. I don't talk about ICT system, as you can imagine, so I will actually I talk about living systems. And a living system, any living system is part of a greater living system, like the fly who lives on the horse manure. We're all part of a greater whole, and also the greater living system can be split in smaller living systems, like with ESTIEM. Now, we've kind of from experiential learning, so not necessarily yet academic proven, but more in the terms of kind of action-oriented research, we've come to understand that there are several principles of living system, and I'd like to share with you 4 of them. And it seems that if we encounter an issue or a conflict or frustration or a drain of energy when we are in an organization or in a team, it may well be that any of these principles is actually disrupted. So let me go through them one by one, and I'll try to keep it short, not sharing too many examples, but I'd like to give you a flavor of them. So first is acknowledging history. And you see that I on purpose made the pictures a little bit organic. It's not really what we're used to as engineers, but I think we're talking here about organic things, and there are no straight lines in nature. So it gives you a bit the mood where you need to think, where you need to be. So acknowledging history. Any organization has an origin, has a start with founders and an original intention. I think everybody knows that one of ESTIEM, and it's been very well kept alive. And now let's consider an example. If you look at universities, Cambridge University, from what I understand from Jim, is very much into growing individuals, growing young people into responsible adults. And yeah, by the way, we are teaching subjects. Now, Eindhoven University, which I tend to know quite well, they teach subjects because they want you to grow as a professional person. And by the way, if you want to grow to be a responsible adult, that's your own business. And what would happen if you would try to merge these two universities? What would be needed to make that succeed? These are the situations where any merger or acquisitions might also be in. Now, everything that came after the origin actually accumulates in who and what we are now. So acknowledging our history is actually acknowledging who we are now. And if you acquire a company, you also acquire its history, whether you like it or not. Any organization has a destination, and an organization can actually reach its destination. So sometimes it's fine if an organization stops. So what I discovered on Quintel, the company that I had founded, when I realized that based on the original intention, it had actually reached its destination, I could accept it and let it go and start something new. So this is about history. The second one is belonging. Now, I think you all kind of have a good feel for belonging, because belonging within ESTIEM is very strong. And we all have a need for belonging, because that's the very basic need for survival. So imagine again a merger or acquisition. People often have difficulty to let go of the herd that they are a part of, because it doesn't feel safe yet to commit to the greater new company. So take an example. In the 1990s, two companies merged, Daimler and Chrysler, both car producer, and on paper it was to be a merger of equals. Now, very soon it turned out that the Daimler, which is a German organization, became more dominant than the Chrysler organization, which is American. And you can say, oh, it's a culture thing, or I wonder. There may be other things that are the case. It's not necessarily always culture or science. Because in systems, there's no such things as equals. We come back to that later. But in this case, so the crisis feel really having a place in this organization. And soon the new company, they started to report losses. People were laid off. And in 2007, so kind of 10 years after they merged, the two companies split again. And they're now on their own. The merger was a fiasco. Now, systems also want to be complete. So regardless how painful and how disastrous the merger was, it is actually now part of these companies' history. It's part of their DNA, and it better be acknowledged and not ignored. The third one is place. So everything has a rightful place, and there is a natural order. Like the example I just mentioned, Chrysler. Daimler was more dominant than Chrysler. Now there's another one, a merger, which is supposedly to be of equals, which is Air France and KLM. And I happen to have studied it a bit. And there as well, you can already kind of sense it, that Air France is more dominant than KLM. Now you can say it's size or culture, but is it really? To actually understand why what the order is like it is, we need to explore a bit more. And it may have to do with who made the merger possible. But who took the first step? Who made the financing possible? Those kind of things, they tend to work through for long periods of time, and they become part of the DNA of the company. Now I don't remember. Oh yeah, I wanted to give you another example of order. Consider a team of ESTIEM. I don't know, academic days team. Think, for example, that there are experienced ESTIEMers in the team, and there's a new team leader, which is kind of new to ESTIEM. And now, what is the order here? So in any team, there are many different types of orders. So one order is that the team leader creates the framework for the rest of the team. That's one way of looking at it, and it's true. There's another order, though, and that is that there's some people in the team that have been there longer, and the people who were first in the team, that's an of ordering, and they set the framework for the others, because whoever is first, like the first child in a family, sets the context, the frame for the others. Another way of looking at it, some people are more longer in esteem than others. So there's another way of ordering. There are many ways. And the thing is to understand is that you need to acknowledge all these different orders, because if you don't, people will do whatever they need to do to make you know their place. The fourth one is exchange. Any system wants to exchange. Like the cells in our body, there's always an exchange, a natural flow between the cells. And it's with any ecosystem. So also in companies. And then there needs to be a balance between give and receive. So if you put a lot of your time and effort in a project, you also want to balance it out with the acknowledgement you get and the growth and satisfaction you get from it. And if that's not balanced, you sense it immediately. And the same way you sense it straight away if you get too much credit. Now I wanted to share these principles of living systems. And now let's take this as an example, or let's use this to look at an industry example. I want to look at the accountancy industry. I think most of you know that there are a lot of scandals in the accountancy industry. And let's take on the glasses of principles of living systems, and let's have a look at what we see if we explore that. Let's start with history. What do you think is the original intention of accountancy? Well, it's if a company publishes a financial statement, you just want to make sure that the numbers are right, so you can trust them as a client or as an investor. And the role of the accountant is to check whether the numbers are right and are a true reflection of the business behind it. So it's trust. Creating trust is their original intention. And what happens to many companies, the original intention. And if you think of the scandals, you kind of wonder if they have not forgotten the original intention of the industry. Then let's look at belonging. That's interesting as well in accountancy. Because consider this company you have to check is, for example, I don't know, Shell. And you work a lot with the people of Shell to try to understand their numbers. And you work so much together that they always become colleagues, you know each other really well. And you almost feel part of their system. Now, where's the border of where do you belong? And where's the border of this system and that system? And this may be one of the root causes why in the past accountants have gone very far in accommodating the business of the client instead of focusing on what they're supposed to do. Then the other one is place. So let's look at order, natural order in accountancy. Also interesting, I think, because you have many different functions in an accountancy office. You have legal, tax, sustainability, human resources, M&A advisory. Oh yeah, by the way, audit as well. And so there's a whole range of functions. Now the question, it's not about what's more important, but it's about which function sets the framework that all the other functions can exist. Which function make it possible for the company to exist in the first place? Maybe it's audit, where it started, or maybe it's M&A, where most money is made. But these are the things to explore and to bring clarity, and that will solve a lot of the problems, I think, in accountancy. Then exchange. So consider this company Shell again, for which we work. If I get a lot of money paid from Shell to do what I do, I also want to give a lot. And I don't know how it developed over the past years, but maybe this is an area to explore a bit further as well. And then another piece on exchange is, as I mentioned, the natural flow that's needed between systems. I don't know whether you know, but PwC has acquired a strategy consulting firm called Booz Allen Hamilton. And they've acquired the company. They reframed it as strategy end. And they said, we want to keep it a bit at a distance because we want them to work in the way they always did, because that's what we like, that's why we bought them. And we don't want to interfere with that. Now, if they are doing their thing, and I'm the accountant doing my thing, then there's no connection that's not going to work. It's not going to be a healthy system. So I don't know how, but somehow they need to find a way to create a natural flow between those different parts of the business. Now, this is just a little exercise to kind of get a flavor of how it can work, and you can use it. I just want you to make sure that you also realize that it's important to do this from the right position and to be really open-minded, and also to not know the answers, because we do want to stay away from dogmatic thinking. Otherwise, we'll do the same thing as has been done so often, that you just jump from symptoms directly to conclusions, which is not what this is all about. It's actually exploring potential root causes. So I would like to introduce this systemic inquiry as a way of thinking to you. And I'm also bringing it to companies. And together with companies, it needs to be really practical, that you can actually use it. So we created a 4-step approach, which we called systemic inquiry. Is about inquiring and trying to understand about the organization. So here are the 4 steps. And as you can see, again, it's very organic, because it is not a straight line. It's an organic thing that we are researching. So you start with framing the issue. Then you observe. You just observe the symptoms, because the symptoms give you hints on where you might need to research a bit more. Like with the accountancy, where there's a lot of scandals, so hey, what are scandals, trust? I mean, let's have a look. Then you go through the inquiry and inquiring about principles of living systems that we talked earlier. And from that, roots develop that grow into a tree of possibilities, possible interventions that you can make to actually improve the situation. Now, I'm like you, I also want to understand how things work. So I'm not a brain specialist, but I try to understand a little bit how this might work. And I think that we have this rational brain, a rational part of the brain, the neocortex, where we're perfectly capable of creating structures. And there's also where we have language. But there's another part of the brain, the limbic brain, where that's the source of our why that we talked about yesterday, but it's also the place where we naturally understand about living systems and the principles that apply for the survival of our cells and our species. And systemic inquiry, I think what it does, it gives language to something we understand, but we don't have language for it because it's in the limbic brain where there's no language. So by using this methodology, you can actually give words to it, and by making it a common language in the workplace, you actually share it together and explore together about what potential dynamics there are. Now, this is all just developments that are just growing as we speak. It's kind of new. But I really, because I think it will enable us to improve our well-being and to do what we are made for, which is to work as a team and work together. And I'm actually not alone with things like that, because companies like McKinsey and Philips are also starting to adopt this way of looking at issues. Now, and I think this is just a little small contribution, if you start using it, to actually the survival of our species, because this is the very reason why these principles of living systems exist in nature in the first place. And by using it within ESTIEM or in any other place that you work or live or cooperate with others, you can actually enjoy the power of a healthy herd. Now, if you want to read more about it, I've made a paper. I wrote a paper for a conference in Oxford, and I put it on LinkedIn. And there you can see how this fits in developments and leadership. And if you want to know more about it, you can also write to me or speak to me. Thank you very much. Is it time for questions or not?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the speech, or the talk. And next up, I will close agenda point number 46 and open agenda point number 47 at Fundum Award results. So, Rana? we do a quick energizer as a dance because I'm not the only one tired, and we really don't have much time.
Yes, is the board responsible. No? Okay, once again, do you want me or Esin? Thank you very much.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Everybody dance now. 2 times. Times.
Once again, now that you know.
Everybody dance now. 2 times. 3 times.
Thank you.
Okay, so right now I'm going to present the Fundum Award results. But first of all, what is the Fundum Award? This year, we decided to allocate 1,000 euro from the ESTIEM budget to stimulate creativity. So we followed up upon the Fundum Award, which was implemented also in 2012. And we basically had the same approach. We just wanted to make ESTIEMers step out of their comfort zone and develop new ideas. If it's either for existing projects, committees, or initiatives, or it could have been also an idea from scratch. In this case, we had 2 application periods, and the sum was allocated up to 250 euro per idea. And we had 2 applications period. One was before Council Meeting Istanbul, and one was before Council Meeting Budapest. And we made the decision shortly before. And now the announcements. We had, unfortunately, only 1 application. I mean, compared to last council meeting where we had 9 and 3 got granted. This time we only had 1 application. Marius applied on behalf of the CRC to get a prize for the ESTIEM 2014 photo competition. And the winner is obviously Marius. Congratulations, Marius. Would you like to shortly say something?
First of all, thank you very much, Board of 2014. And I would actually like to use this opportunity as well. Please go to the portal. There's a news item on our internal page. And check the competition out. And if you want, please engage with it and participate in it. Thank you very much.
If you have questions.
Yes. Okay. Let's take Hardy's question first.
Yeah, Hardy Laprant, will the winner of the picture after 2013 get something, maybe?
Actually, last year we were lucky enough that the organizers of Council Meeting Boğaziçi had already offered a prize within the limits of their own council meeting budget, so you're supposed to get it there. Sorry? Then please apply again. I'm sure you have amazing photos again.
Yeah, let's take the questions, yep.
I have 2 questions. First question, quickly, I didn't really get how much did they get? How much money? Because there's 1,000 euros allocated, but...
In this case, the sum was really small. He said up to 50 euro, but it's flexible. In this case, since it's the only application, we'll just discuss it with him. But it's probably going to be a sum under around 50, I would say, because it's just a small prize.
And second question, can you give us a head up like what happened with the winners of Istanbul and what they have done and achieved now?
Yes. So, so last council meeting, it was definitely more exciting. We had 9 applications and 3 got granted. The ones that got granted were the monument for ESTIEM, which local group Darmstadt already, it was already done, which means that they had a plaque in the founding pub of ESTIEM, where the first discussions about ESTIEM started. So they already put it there. I don't know if they submitted their reimbursement form yet, but I mean, it has already happened. Then Alina and Florian, the trainers' practice camp already happened. So congrats Alina and Florian on that. And the third one was Lassie's idea, the regional benchmarking forum, which is scheduled for next year. So far the costs haven't been allocated, but it will.
Thank you. Let's take the question from the right.
Anya, local group Belgrade. I didn't have time during the discussion session to ask this question, but because it's connected, about awarding some active ESTIEMers during the year. I think this amount of €1,000 can be also implemented to, for example, to award the most active ESTIEMers in some committees, for example, to pay participation for comms or something like this. Have you been thinking about this to motivate people?
Thank you very much. I think it's a really amazing idea, and I think you should apply, or somebody that would like to follow up on this idea. We would be very much open for it. But ESTIEMers need to apply. We cannot apply on behalf of the board to the board, because that doesn't make much sense. So the idea is to stimulate ESTIEMers' creativity, so thank you very much for this suggestion. I hope somebody will follow up on it. It was the same case with Marios applying on behalf of the PRC.
Thank you. Let's take one last question from the front and move forward.
Hello, I'm Jonathan from LG Brussels, and I hope
Closer.
I hope I'm not the only one, but I don't really get what it's about and why we only had one applicant this time. It was about picture for him, but I don't get what is the Fundum Award. Just can you explain me, please?
So your question is, what did he get? What he applied for, or?
No, not what
What's
did he get,
Fundum Award?
but why was he allowed to apply, and what do we have to do to apply, like he did for the next council meeting, maybe?
It depends board if they would follow up on this and also have it next year and allocate from the budget a similar sum. I hope it will happen. Basically, it was promoted to the active list. It was promoted to the active list, yes. And also, I think there was a newsletter item about it. And there was a certain template to be filled in with the idea, the description of the idea, the budget, the allocation of the budget, and everything. And then it was submitted to the board. And a couple of weeks before the council meeting, we analyzed all the applications, in this case one. And yes, we selected the winners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zorana. Time to close point number 47 at Fundum Award, and open point number 48. We cannot take any more questions, we don't have time. You can ask it privately afterwards. Open point number 48, ESTIEMer of the Year update.
Actually, it's not an update, it's the final one. Mistake.
That's what my agenda says.
Yes, thanks. Can I get my presentation? Nice cat. What was the name of the cat? Ajda Kesbansu is not the ESTIEMer of the Year, but now we will find who it is. So basically, what is the ESTIEMer of the Year award? Every year we tend to award the most active ESTIEMers, basically to appreciate their activeness, to motivate them to get more active, and yeah, it's so maybe some of you remember back in Istanbul, I did an update on how it is going, who's the most active ESTIEMer back then, and now we will announce who was the most active ESTIEMer during the whole year. So from Council Meeting Portugal until this Council Meeting. How does it go? Basically, there are two fields. The activeness points from the from the PCI, and the points that are awarded by traveling, basically. So every leader gives points to the members of their PCI. 1, 2. Jesus Christ! Just a second.
PCI is the abbreviation for projects, committees, or initiatives.
And once again, thanks, Tibor. And then we sum it up for all projects, committees, and initiatives. And also, people get points by traveling. You can see how the scoring system works. And here we go. So, on place 10 with 16 points, Duygu Gunay. Hi to you. Place 8 with 17 points. Stefan Kristevski and Tanya Kestrenko from Skopje and Kiev. Congrats. Place 6, 19 points. Stephanie and Tiana from Eindhoven and Belgrade. Place 5, 23 points. Alas. And place 4, Emilia from Warsaw, 27 points. Congrats. And I would like to invite the ESTIEMer of the Year 2013 to help. Three, maybe she will come up, yes, and say a few words about herself.
Hi, my name is Louise. I don't think you know me at all. So yes, last year I was named ESTIEMer of the Year after being active in several different projects and committees and traveling to I don't even remember how many events. So yeah, now I will announce who was on third place. So, this person has been active in the Europe 3D, Training Committee, Members Committee, Knowledge Management Committee, ESTIEM Book, Academic Days. First event was in Belgrade, is a party animal and the most Iberian Nordic person in ESTIEM. And it's Lassi Usitalo.
Congratulations to Lassi. So, second place. This ESTIEMer is active in Members Committee, Magazines, Social and Environmental Responsibility Initiative, Knowledge Management Committee, Europe 3D, Summer Academy Grants Committee, and Training Committee. She was the organizer of the best event in the summer. She is kind of Finnish and a beekeeper. And of course, it's Laina Schilderer from Riga. Congrats, Laina, baby.
So, who will be my successor? Well, this person has been active in the Knowledge Management Committee, the Members Committee, the Training Committee, Europe 3D, Language Program, IT Committee, Academic Days, ESTIEM Book, Summer Academy, Student Guide. The list is longer than mine, I promise you. First event was in March 2013. Has Russian connections. Have attended 32 events, and it is Max Molia from LG Aachen.
Mark, tell us, how do you feel?
Excited.
He's also Finnish.
It really feels great to get this nice yellow t-shirts. I was waiting for this the whole year. Yeah, I'm a bit speechless at the moment, so I will say something later.
Approach him over a beer. So, Thank you guys, and thank you, Mark, for everything you've done for ESTIEM. Enjoy your t-shirt.
So get active to get this t-shirt in 1 year.
Now my second presentation.
Thank you, Rada, Luis, and Mark. Time to close agenda point number 48, ESTIEMer of the Year Award, and open agenda point number 49, activity rankings. Let's take, is Jonas Enlund here? Woo! Come here. Can you open this video? Mute the live screen. So Jonas, do you know how to dance rave? There's a really famous video on YouTube, a Swedish guy teaching how to dance rave. And it used to be my favorite when I was a teenager, in my teenage parties.
Okay. Okay, the mic is a bit broken. Never mind that. So the Swedes can apparently dance. Wow. Hey, Swedes. But let's see how they do in the activity award. So, so basically, this is a bit different because it's not calculated from council meeting to council meeting, but from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. And there are 2 updates per year in the spring council meeting and autumn council meeting. Actually, in the spring council meeting, there are 2 presentations because there is an update and a final ranking from the previous year. However, now we just do the update and then the winner is announced in council meeting Baltics. Point system. So, travel points, how does it work? So for every participant that a local group sends to an event, they get 1 point. For the first participant, so if there is like 1 person going to the event, you get 3 points, and 2 points whenever like a newbie travels, like for their first time in their ESTIEM career. Also here, activity points from ESTIEMer of the year are calculated in the same way that is done there, just on the local group basis and as personal. And leaders get 4 points per semester for their local group. And the event organization, there is a whole list of how many points do you get for every event and also some formulas. Won't bore you too much with that. So, most active guest group was local group Minsk. Congratulations, Minsk. Most active observer group was local group Santi. And most active on central level was local group Belgrade. Congratulations. But that's so far, not for the whole year again. So the results from the 11th to the 25th place go like, let's go, and we go. Milan, Darmstadt, Enschede, Izmir Economy, Aachen, Paderborn, Kiev, Novi Sad, St. Petersburg, Warsaw, Brussels, Karlsruhe, Ankara, Bilkent, Riga, and Lappeenranta. I'll give you a second to take a look. And you can see the points. Good? Okay, so now for 10th to the 4th place. 10, Skopje. 9, Madrid. 8, Istanbul-Boğaziçi. 7, ITU. 6, Moscow. 5, Porto. And 4, Budapest. Congratulations. Take pictures, yes, take pictures. You'll have the presentation on the portal, but take pictures anyways. Okay. And now to the first 3. Once again, this is just an update. The final ranking is in Riga. So, on the 3rd place, local group that had 197 applications for the events, which is the most out of all ESTIEM local groups. 97 travels, 19 people active on the central level, which is 3rd in the complete ranking. Accommodated 50 ESTIEMers by organizing 4 events. And at one point, they contacted me about organizing 2 events at the same time. So crazy active people. And it's Ankara Metu, 340 points. Congrats, Metu. Yes, take a selfie, yeah. Good. Okay, 2nd place. So a local group founded in 2006, so quite young. 116 travels, which is the most right now out of all ESTIEM local groups. And the most active by the amount of people active on central level, with 28 people. And hosted 21 ESTIEMer in 1 event so far. And yeah, it's my local group. It's local group Belgrade. Good. Okay, so now for the first one, yeah. Sit down. So they will organize an event in December, so you can go there and see how active they are. They have 109 hours. They have 20 people active on central level, which is second. And 100 ESTIEMers accommodated so far this year in 6 events, which is amazing. And number of people at ESTIEM Budapest, how many do you have? Eindhoven. This is just amazing, guys. Congratulations. So, that's it. If you have any questions to the previous 2 presentations, how the pointing system is done, or anything, you can ask them now, or in the break, or on the lunch, or in the evening. No questions? Great. Thank you.
Rade. Before we finish and move on to lunch, we have an announcement from Local Group Madrid.
Oh, hello guys. So basically we had
Pick up.
Oh yeah, sorry. We had a super cool quiz on Facebook because we just designed a sweatshirt, super cool sweatshirt, and we wanted to announce the winner. Well, basically the quiz was among the people who liked the picture, and the winner is Siros from Local Group Eindhoven.
Thank you very much for this present. I've always dreamed of getting a Madrid sweater. I really like you guys, your local group, and I really find it amazing to see how quick your local group is growing. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Do the organizers have something to say? Okay, good. Then we have a lunch break, and we will be back at exactly 2:30. So ready at 2:30.